Grab your cup of coffee. Sit down for a story. Let's all go exploring. Making it after 40. Making it after 40. Making it after 40.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Making It After 40 podcast. I am your host, Lisa Rodriguez. I am an actor and writer who is still trying to make it after the age of 40. On this show, we explore what it means to be an artist trying to make it as a middle-aged person. Thank you all for being so patient as I adapt to my new life and my new schedule. I'm finding a way to get these episodes out, but sometimes barely by the skin of my teeth. So I hope these episodes are truly bringing you joy. It's not an easy task making these things happen, given my new life responsibilities, but I don't want to give it up. I don't think I can ever give it up. It just means too much to me. All that aside, I am so excited to bring to you this week my guest, Vanessa McGrady. Vanessa is a career journalist and author who has written for Forbes, the New York Times, Washington Post, KPCC, and so much more. And she has an incredible memoir called Rock Needs River about her journey to adopt her daughter. We get into all of it, including her ghostwriting career for corporations, which is a whole other avenue that truly does support artists in many ways. Vanessa is a literal badass, and she's even writing a new graphic novel, which we talk about briefly. I really loved getting to know her, and I think you will too. Please enjoy me and Vanessa chatting away. Okay, so today on the show, I have my guest, Vanessa McGrady. Vanessa, I know through my mom's group. She's one of my Neela moms through, of course, the always ever mentioned Leonora.
Our queen.
Yes, she really is. I don't think we can say that enough because she's mentioned so many times on these podcasts and with guests. And even like people who I've had on who have nothing to do with a mom's group, like they just happen to know Leonora because she was their voice coach or, like dialect coach or whatever. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So Vanessa you're primarily a writer these days, but you also do voiceover and you've been a producer and all kinds of wonderful things. I'd love for you to share with us how you identify as an artist, though.
Oh, that is a great question because I think there's a few verticals in that, as they would say in the corporate world, the verticals.
Vertical integration.
The vertical integration of that. And there's things that you do that are already like make a cute breakfast. You make a sort of a pastoral scene with your fried egg. I think that's arty. And I'm working on a few things right now that are writing. One is a graphic novel, an adult time travel feminist superhero graphic novel. And I'm also working on another memoir about grief, and it's grief in different essays. But I've also written a book. It was a proper memoir. It was about adopting my daughter, and at the later age, I would say, of 43, and becoming a mom. And when her birth parents became homeless, they moved in with us, and it was we learned a lot about that dynamic in a way, and about homeless dynamics and systems that are not working in a way that we probably would not have if they hadn't lived with us. So that's what that memoir is about. But I've also been a journalist and a playwright and a producer, like you said. I've done voiceovers, I've done commercials. That's kind of in my rearview mirror at this point, but I can't say that I'll never go back to that. It's just the dormant part right now.
And I think that's super interesting. I mean, I knew of you through the moms group. And then of course, when I was looking at your website to have you on, I found that you have done so much. And then reading about your memoir of adopting your daughter, Rock Needs River, it was just so Such a unique story. I haven't read the memoir yet, but just the idea that you would be taking in your kiddo's, biological parents and through unfortunate circumstances. I want to get into that because I'd love to hear how that has kind of informed your art and your journey. And I don't know. I like lately I've been doing so much talking with folks who have been going through like various stages of grief or growth, and learning how we process that through our art is super interesting to me.
That's why being a journalist is so great and has been so great, is because anything that is affecting you or making you sad or happy or excited, you can explore that and get paid for it, which is is pretty great. But it also gives you this space and this platform to share it with people. And as we find often, something that's deeply, deeply personal is also very universal.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost like the more specific you are, the more it's able to resonate with people, which you wouldn't think when it's so specific to your own story, that you would think that would just like be isolating or something to people, that they wouldn't be able to relate. But I find that it's even easier for people to like see themselves in your circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, here's like basically the story is about our weird family, and someone might read it and think like, "Oh, I have a weird family too. Okay, that's cool." Everybody
Yeah.
has a weird family. I forgot. That's right.
It's cool to be from a weird family. Well, how did you get into writing and journalism? What was your story?
I come from a family of writers. My grandparents were both writers.
Oh, wow.
My grandfather was a reporter with UPI, and he actually covered World War II, and he was
Wow.
based in Shanghai, which is where my dad was conceived. And my dad and his brothers were writers as well. My dad, his big thing was he wrote a diet book in the 1980s called the Pritikin Diet. It came out in 1980. So I think a lot of our parents had this on their shelf. He co-wrote that book. But he'd also been a journalist, and my uncle Mike was a writer, and I guess it's like the family business, I guess.
Yeah, it's in your blood.
Yeah, I didn't know I would end up doing it, but I guess that's where I landed. So I'm
Yeah.
happy
So
about that.
did you go to school, when you went to school, it wasn't necessarily that you were seeking it out. It just kind of ended up happening. Couldn't avoid it.
I wasn't that good at math, so I could do other things. Yeah. So
Yeah.
in college I was a journalism major.
Yeah. And then at what point did you find, because it's funny, I have a cousin who's a journalism major, and she does a lot of freelance stories, and she was working for I can't remember which paper, but she was working for a paper up here in Northern California. And now she's starting to write a book about, oh my gosh, I'm going to mess this up, Lindsay. I'm so sorry. It's about like trees and the forestry and like replanting trees. And Lindsay Jean, I'm so sorry, I'm getting your book all wrong. But basically, she grew up in Northern California, and her parents have like a ton of acres. And they work with some sort of California commission to like make sure that their property continues to have redwoods and all that stuff. And so what her book is like kind of goes into like all that stuff in some sort of way in detail. And I'm doing a terrible job of talking about it. But I think it's really neat that the journalism can often lead to like writing books.
It leads to a lot of things. It led to really, it opened the door for a corporate job. I took a job doing a lot of environmental work for utility.
Oh, okay.
And that was pretty great. At first I thought, I just moved to Los Angeles, and I didn't know that many people, and I didn't have any kind of steady job going because I'd been freelancing for so long, but really like scratching it out as a freelancer.
Mhm.
I lived in a $600 house in Seattle that I shared with my boyfriend. So my rent was like $300 a month, and I was making maybe like, I don't know, $600 a month or
Yeah.
something. I mean, it was just, I was like really, really scratching it on the freelance angle. And then I moved to Los Angeles, and I took this job at Edison, and I thought, oh, I'll just be there for 6 months. And then they like paid me so well, and the people were so nice. And I really learned so much there. I mean, it sort of had devolved to kind of a toxic environment, and I left. But after 7 years, I really had done a lot, and that set me up in a lot of ways to even be more creative, because I feel like I hope we get to talk about this whole starving artist
Yeah.
thing, and the importance of having a job and being able to support yourself, because I think you'll make better art that way. And I feel like that was so helpful to have this, the skill set that I learned there, to be able to make more money so that I can do dumb things like this time travel graphic novel,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I mean, we can just get right into that idea, because I think that's an idea that is so important and timely, especially now with the writer strike and with the actor strike. And it's putting so many people out of work. Just, like, yes, the writers and the actors, but also so many other parts of that whole machinery, the makeup artists and the costume designers and the set designers and all the crew guys and all these people. But for the writers and the actors alone, who are the most visible, like, that's become a huge part of them even being able to do their work. For me too, like, I do the podcast because I love it. I don't make any money doing it. I have to fit it into my life, and in fact, I pay to do it because I have to pay for the hosting sites. But I have a day job, and so I have to fit all this stuff in around my day job, um, with the idea that hopefully, if I'm not starving, then I can fund the projects that I want to do. I have a short film that I want to make, but I'm never going to be able to make it unless I make the money, because who wants to fund short films these days?
Sure. Yeah. And I think there's so many different ways. I'm not saying there's only one way to do your art or be an artist, but it's really, great to be able to support yourself and not be so desperate that you're going to either compromise your art for something or someone. They're like, oh, well, we love this, but can you make it a younger woman who's, blonde, and I don't know, she fights bears or whatever, but that wasn't your original idea, so you don't really have to, compromise those things. So I
Yeah.
think I'm just like, I guess for, all younger artists, I'd say just like make sure you have a skill that you can fall back on in the other times.
Yeah, because there's always going to be lean times, right? There's going to be times when you're making lots of money, but then there are going to be lean times. So I think more and more people are finding that is an important piece of all this, is finding ways to have some sort of skill or something that you're good at, or an alternative passion that you can use to help fill the gaps.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't even have to be, it could be like tending bar, waiting tables, nannying, any kind of job that you enjoy, that you don't have to, hinge your whole like creative self on. Is I think it's great for your creativity.
Yeah, and something that's not going to burn you out,
Yeah.
because you don't want to be in a situation where you're so unhappy that now you're burnt out, and then you're not making it, and you're not doing anything. You're not happy in your work life, and you're not doing anything with your creative self.
That's true. Yeah. By the time I left that job, I also had like an infant, and I was crying to and on my way to and from work, and
Yeah.
I wasn't getting a lot done. But I would say you do have to, no matter how successful you are, you do kind of have to steal time for yourself, right? Like you have to, like, in order to write that book, I had to go to um, the Annenberg, the beach house that every Saturday, I guess I went every Sunday morning. I would just like say no to everything on Sundays and like only work on Sundays, or,
Yeah.
only work when my daughter was with her father or something like that, just to um, be able to just carve that time and steal it for myself.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be one of my questions is how did you write a book when you had a child? Because I know even for me, trying to fit in like a few pages of a screenplay each week is really hard.
It's really hard. And I also have other gigs I do. I do a lot of corporate gigs. I do executive ghostwriting,
Mm,
and executive communication type things. But to write the book, I had to steal time. So
yeah.
I had to, uh, and I did it over a few years. But for a while, I think the most successful thing was during the week. Because Grace was in either preschool or elementary school. She's 12 now, but I would, from 9 to 12, that's all I would do, would just be work on my book. That's it. I
Yeah.
would not answer emails. I wouldn't work on money work. I wouldn't do, any of that other stuff. And I would only work on the book because that's my best. I think you just have to identify your best working time. For some people, it's
Hmm.
late at night. Some people, it's early in the morning. I'm kind of that
Yeah.
9 to 12 window. And then I'm useless after
Yeah.
like 2. So,
Yeah. It's funny you said that you had to identify your best working time. I thought what you were going to say is like you have to identify like your best uh or your like your passion project, the thing that means you're the most to you, or like your money maker type of thing. I thought that's what you were going to say, and because it was bringing me to this point. Maybe I just wanted to go to this point, so I was hoping that's what you were going to say. Was there was a writer, the one who wrote Fleischman's in Trouble.
oh, Taffy,
um,
yeah.
yeah, she talked about how she did an interview with oh my gosh, his name escaped me, the guy who did If You Like Pina Colada. Who's that? Buffett,
Oh, yeah,
Jimmy Buffett.
Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah, okay,
I
so
think
she interviewed.
I don't think that was him.
Is
Jimmy
that not
Buffett.
right?
Pina Colada song is like somebody. Oh my god, hold on.
No, Margaritaville.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay,
Okay,
all
I
right,
see.
yeah.
I'm all over the place. It's burnout from my whole week of training. So Jimmy Buffett told her that like the Margaritaville is his moneymaker, and he's like, you got to find your Margaritaville. And so that's when she was
Hmm.
like, okay, then I need to finish writing that book. Wait, Fleischman's in Trouble, because that's going to be my moneymaker. And I thought that was like really good advice, like to artists, is like figure out like what is your Margaritaville and put all your energy and heart into that and make that happen.
And I would also say there's no, I mean, unless someone has a book contract for you already or some kind of contract for that idea already, like there's no guarantee that the thing you think is going to be the most commercially successful will. Like I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Taffy is she's an incredible. She's basically I know her, and she's basically this. She's very incredible because she does have this kind of like, she decided she wanted to be a journalist, and from our perspective, like from the
Yeah.
outside, it seemed like she became this like amazing journalist. Like suddenly she was like in all these magazines, and then she does, New York Times styles, and she was on,
Yeah.
I want to say GQ maybe. And she, she is just really, she's so good at everything she tries. It feels like, especially
Yeah.
professionally, she's so good at the things that she tries. But and she might have this great sense for it. But I think, a lot of times if we try to make a commercial thing, like, I don't know if that's great advice for everybody. I mean, Taffy, like, she could just, like, write about, I don't know, a squashed bug on the sidewalk, and it's gonna
She
be
just has a
amazing,
knack.
but I
Yeah.
I would say because so many original things, like, we didn't know we needed, I don't know, The Simpsons, but
Yeah.
there they are, or you don't know that you
Yeah.
need certain I really loved Tiny Beautiful Things. That was such a beautiful
Oh
book
yeah.
and show, and like how they did the show. And I don't know, I feel like you should just like make the thing you need to make, and if it is good, people will understand that it is good.
Yeah.
And it will become commercial. But I don't know if it's good advice to do the thing you think is going to be commercial.
Right.
Because then you're going to be like everybody else, because then you're already copying what somebody else did, and it's not going to be as
Right.
good.
Well, I mean, I guess the advice would be, yeah, write the thing that's true to you, right? And then
True to
it'll
you.
it'll naturally be good because it's honest and true to you. And maybe Margaritaville was honest to Jimmy Buffett. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, it's a great song. But also Jimmy Buffett was like an established artist by that
Yeah, yeah,
time
I'm
too,
sure he was.
So
Yeah,
I think it's great advice, and do the thing that you love the most, and don't try to make it like you think people would want it.
yeah, yeah. How do you, with your experience with being involved in the corporate world, because I know that you do, like you just said, you do a lot of executive ghostwriting and you do have that mix, having worked with Edison and all that. How do you think that's, well, you've spoken about those jobs giving you the stability and the ability, and therefore the brain space and the money space to make your art. Do you feel like you learned anything else, or those collaborations kind of have informed your work at all?
Oh my gosh, so much. Like to run a meeting even. So this
Mm-hmm.
morning I had a meeting with my artist for my graphic novel, my agent. She was on it, and this guy I hired, Dean Haspiel, who is like a comics veteran, um, who is consulting on our pitch. Like he's helping us say like this should be in the pitch, don't put this in, because we've never pitched this before. So just
Mm-hmm.
even something as simple as like running a meeting and communicating with people and understanding like what pieces you have to. I got very organized being in a corporate environment.
Yeah.
So, and I also learned the other good thing about it was I learned how to be very creative within parameters.
Mm-hmm.
So especially heavily regulated industries. They're kind of my specialty now, like healthcare, financial
Mm-hmm.
services, utilities. So there's a lot of ways you can be creative, but it's within a certain framework, and that's it's a great creativity boot camp, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important. And I think that's often lacking in so much like of the teaching of the arts, whether you're going to art school or you're going to, if you're getting a degree in writing, even with acting and stuff, there's a lot of structure in the business elements that they don't teach you. And so you kind of have to learn by the seat of your pants. And if you don't ever get to be involved in some sort of corporate world, then you never get those skills.
Yeah, and don't let it crush your soul. Like when it's, when it's time to go. I think it's often difficult, but I put so much of myself into those jobs, and I felt so deeply. I don't know if it's because I'm Pisces, or whatever the thing is, but I think at this
Yeah.
point, if I did another like corporate job, well, and this is how I am freelancing, is just like it's just very business, it's professional, go to work, come home from work, and then do your thing. But I probably wouldn't, feel so, I wouldn't take it all so personally, I think. And
Yeah.
the other thing about it too is I made great friends. I made friends that I'll be friends with for the rest of my life. And they're really lovely people. So,
I think it's nice to have a diversified group of friends from
yeah,
all different
yeah.
areas and industries.
And I mean, some of those friends are great artists too. I have this friend, Ed Hume, who was the creative director, and he's retired now, but he like makes mandolins and musical instruments, and he
Oh,
does
wow.
bluegrass, and he's a beautiful painter, and he restores he made the windows for his house. Like he's just like this beautiful craftsman. So, I think there's art and creativity everywhere and in everybody, and it's where you just gotta learn about them and find out where it is.
Yeah. And I think it's neat when creatives can bring some of that to the workplace too. It helps people kind of loosen up and have a little fun and see how you can bring a little bit of color to your day.
Yeah, and for anybody who's actually like an employer listening, like always bet on the creative one. Like you can always teach somebody to code for example, or to make
Mm-hmm.
a website, or learn this program, but you can't teach somebody to write or be an artist or be creative. And that's, those are those skills that are so special that, enhance anything else. So if you have a choice between like an artist who can't code and a, coder who can't be creative, go with the artist. Just teach them the code.
Yeah. I know in what I do, I get to dabble in a little bit of both worlds. I get to bring my creativity to the business, but like for me, my biggest thing is, as you can tell with this podcast, I love to connect to people. I love to hear their stories. I like to really bridge that gap and feel like I'm making a difference in somebody's day, whether it's like helping them to share their story, or like for the listeners listening to somebody else's story, and they feel less alone in whatever they're doing. But even in my current role, I feel like I get to do a little bit of that, with like, we plan tenant events and we get to do like fun social stuff, or, bringing new ideas to the table of like how we can like set up certain spaces, or we get to like, you know, bring in our input for like redesigning the lobby. Of course, there's architects who like do the, bring in all the ideas, but we get to put in our input too, and like,
Sure,
oh,
that's
well, for
important.
practical reasons, this might be good, and yeah.
It's important. And I think actually I want to go back to something that you said, was we also have to, I think, remember that, having a job is exhausting, and raising kids is tiring, or taking care of a family, or taking care of animals. Like all of those things are really tiring. And I think it's, important to not be, if you haven't written an opera yet, don't beat yourself up. Like it's
Hmm.
basically making a plan for what you can do in the time that you do have, and the time you can steal from yourself.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I want to talk about your memoir. Obviously, you had this incredible experience with your daughter. What kind of um gave you the courage, or like what was the catalyst, the inspiration to go ahead and put it down and share it with the world?
That's a good question. They were staying with me still, and they were interested in getting their story out, because I think they thought it could help them in some way. And so I wrote about it for the New York Times, for KJ Del Antonia, who is she's a podcaster too. She's like a wonderful books person now. She writes and reviews books, and she was the editor then. So I wrote that story, and it still felt, a lot of times when you're a writer, you feel like you write a story, you place it, it runs, and it's kind of over, and then you just move on to the next thing. But in a way, this one
Yeah.
still felt alive. Like there was more to tell, and there was more to it. And then there's sort of a circuitous way. I found my agent who I found a wrong agent who said, this isn't for me, but you probably want to talk to Cheryl Pianka.
Okay.
So Cheryl had done she's adopted, and she had done her thesis on open adoption. So it was kind of like the perfect like angel agent for me. And she
Yeah.
was very patient with all my drafts, and, over truly it was years that she would look at something and say, I know I told you to do this, but it's actually not working. So I'm like, oh my God. So I'd start over again. And then
Yeah, you got to
finally,
know when you're wrong. Yeah.
yeah. But I also knew when I was right too. And I said,
Yeah.
Cheryl, this is the last draft I'm going to do. And the next person who changes one word is going to be the editor who buys this book. Like, I feel like I've done everything that I can do. And then sure enough, she sold it. And it came out in 2019. And then it had been optioned on and off, but now there's actually somebody else in our mom's group who is the director for this project for a TV show. Jennifer
Yay.
Getzinger is my director, and she's really a lovely, cool, amazing person, and she's also an adoptive mom. And but
Oh,
she's been with me from this project from the start. So we've gotten an option, and now the writer's strike. We were starting to interview showrunners,
ugh,
and then the writer's strike happened. So womp womp. I guess we
wah,
have to
wah,
wait
wah.
on that. But
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of been the journey of that book. But I see a book as more like your calling card to other things, whether it's the
Mm,
next book or more stories or becoming an expert on something or being positioned as an expert or TV or, whatever
yeah.
the um the thing is. But I don't think we should see as a book as like saving us from something, or I'm going to write this book and it's going to be a bestseller. I mean, success stories like Taffy's are amazing and they're rare, and
Yeah.
so I think we have to remember that like most books don't make more than, I don't know, $5,000 or something.
Yeah.
So I'm 4 years out and I still have not earned out my advance. So
Yeah.
it's just,
Oh,
you know, but I'm happy that I've had it, and hopefully it'll provide in the future. But
yeah.
it's a calling card, really.
Yeah. And then, well, I want to talk about your graphic novel, but first I want to ask, has your daughter read the book?
She, we have an audio copy, and when it first came out, she was really interested in listening to the beginnings of it.
Uh-huh.
But I don't. She's at this age now. She's 12, and I don't think she doesn't want me to post pictures of her on social media. And I
Yeah.
think she's really like become very private. So she was glad that we wrote the book. And this whole time I've been talking to her like, okay, well, we're writing this treatment of the TV show. Do you want the Grace character to be more like you or less like you? Like, so we keep checking in
Yeah.
about it. But she's really, she's in a really private stage right now. And I'm trying to, there's a story at the end of the book, and her own it's basically her own story, and it's her own origin story that she had grown from a tiny baby in a magnolia pod in a tree. And so the squirrels and the birds and the butterflies would come and they would bring her nectar and milk and juice. But then she got too big for the tree. And so they asked if I wanted to be her mommy. And I know it's like the most beautiful,
Oh my
lovely
God,
story.
that's so beautiful.
And so I'm writing that as a children's book now. That's like another thing I'm in the middle of, is doing that as a children's book, as like just a sort of a metaphor for adoption. But she doesn't want her name on it. And I'm like, really? It's your
Oh.
story though. And she's like, she's like, I want half the money, but don't put my name on it. So I'm just trying to respect that
Oh.
privacy of hers. So
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm so glad you're making that into a children's book. That's going to be so magical. I love that so much. That's
I
so
hope
beautiful.
so. Thank you. It's hard. It's right. It's a different muscle, It's like a hard muscle to exercise. So
I know it's so funny because, like, I don't know. I mean, me not being a professional writer or anything, I like sometimes in your children's books, I think like, oh, I could do that, but it's like in actuality, it's way harder than you think. Like,
it's really
because you have to be
hard.
so succinct, and like you
Mhm.
only have like a few sentences per page, and you need to be like really tight and like intentional with the words and telling the story in like such a short amount of time.
And also, I think the hard part is to not be treacly,
Oh yeah,
like
that
to not be
too.
like too cloying, because I find myself like, I don't know, veering into that territory sometimes, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh God, this is awful. So that's
Yeah.
definitely a new muscle that I'm trying to flex.
Yeah, you don't wanna, like, talk down to the kids because I've definitely, like, picked we've gotten some books and I'm like, "Oh my god, like, this is, like, so basic. Come on." Like, they're children. They're not, dummies. They can
Oh, yeah,
you
yeah.
can talk to them like they're people.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's another thing in the mix.
How has it been for you? Obviously, motherhood completely informed a whole new book. But besides that, how do you think motherhood has informed your writing, especially coming into it after the age of 40? I mean, that's I had my second kid a few months before I turned 40, and I know just that experience. I'm a much different parent now than I was when I had my first child. Of course, different father, different circumstances. I think age played a lot into it. So I'm curious how that was for you and how that kind of informed your writing and maybe perhaps the way you approached your work.
I think it changed everything. I mean, it's who I am on a
Yeah.
cellular level, I feel
Yeah.
changed. I know not every mom has that experience, but for me, it was definitely that. And for her dad and I split when she was 2. He was an
Mm-hmm.
alcoholic. He actually has since died. He actually died the week that my book came out.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so it was also being a single mother. So it changed my writing, I would say, that I became very efficient. Like my work had to become so efficient because I was having to pick her up, or, like really revolve my day around school and school pickup and drop off. And, after, you know, 2019, to be a single mom, like 100% single mom,
Yeah.
um, was it was really the architecture of my day. It was, around Grace and what she needed. So it made me very grateful to be able to freelance for sure, and very grateful to my clients. But also, it made me like say no to a lot of things too, like no to projects that I didn't really want to do.
Yeah.
Even things that I started that I didn't really want to do, that I didn't think would come to anything. I just had to really pick and choose the most viable things. So
Yeah. That I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I hear that a lot with people kind of after they kind of get into middle age or when they become parents, they just, yeah, they don't have a problem saying no to the things that just don't resonate or don't fit anymore.
yeah, I just don't. I mean, as being a parent, like you just don't have the same kind of time. My fantasy is like I'm married now, actually. I got married in November to my pandemic boyfriend.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And but I still have this fantasy that I have like an apartment somewhere, and I get to be there like in a very charming place, maybe like Porto in Portugal or something, or like I have this
Yeah.
apartment and I get to be there for like, I don't know, 2 weeks by myself.
Yeah.
So, but and to write and to do my own thing and not, but of course I would like probably miss them after 3 or 4 days. But
Yeah.
it forces you to become like a eraser, and just
Yeah.
cut out the things that don't belong.
Yeah. I like that. Be like a razor. I definitely feel that I've been at this hotel room for the last 4 nights. And it's been nice, but of course, to be fair, like I've had full days of training and work to do, but I had all these visions of like, and then I'm going to get home and then I'm going to edit my podcast episodes. And then I'm also going to work on an outline for that screenplay that's been in my head forever. And then I'm going to, and yeah, no. And then
No.
I've got one interview in this week and I'm proud of myself for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I actually learned this thing um, from a friend of mine, and he is a writer, and he would write every day. He would write 1,200 words, no matter what. He would sit down and write 1,200 words at least, and then if he felt like he needed more, he would do more. But that's how he got all
Mm.
these books written. Was just having
Oh.
this discipline of that time. And he was also a single dad. She wasn't with him all the time, but um, and then also I had this friend, Angie McCulloch. She's a wonderful writer up in Seattle. And she wrote a book. We all worked together at this magazine, Alaska Airlines magazine. And but she would go at lunch every day, and we would all be like, "Hey, come out for lunch. Hey, there's like the special at the Indian place, or whatever." She would just say like, "No, thanks." And she would go to her Starbucks and she would work on her book every single day for an hour, and she got a lot done because she just really dedicated that time. So, and she had
Yeah.
little kids too. So it was really like like you guys just gotta like steal that time.
You have to dedicate yourself to finding those pockets. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's you're working it out with your partner so that way you're taking turns on bedtime nights, and when it's your night off, you just like I almost feel like you in most cases you have to like go out to the Starbucks, or if you can isolate yourself in a room, great. But I just feel like if you're in the house, you're going to get sucked into something.
It's so hard. I mean, I didn't have an office with a door until we moved. I moved, but we were living in this little apartment in Glendale, Grace and I still didn't have an office with a door. Like
Yeah.
like my office was in the dining room, so I couldn't, and I'm grateful I had that place, and I really loved that place a lot, and we had a lot of life in there, but this is the first time I've ever had a door that I could close, so that's
Yeah.
been great, really.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about your new project if you're up for talking about it. At all. I'm just curious, with having a 12-year-old, has there been some inspiration for graphic novels because of the things that they're interested in?
That's a great question. And, I haven't really made that connection until you just said something, but she is loves graphic novels. Like, she's definitely more into reading those than big, long books. And she's 12, which is fine. Like, if she can be reading and not on the iPad, I'm so happy. It's just it's that eternal struggle. But it was based on just a name of the superhero. I'll tell you what it is. I'm going to write it as a nom de plume. But
Okay.
but the name of my nom de plume is Lacey Bottoms, and
Nice.
the hero, her name is Laser Pussy, and
Hey!
it's basically like what you could like.
I love it.
Yeah. And so at first I kept thinking of this cartoon, and like it's a cartoon, and my agent was like, "Hey, where's that novel you're working on?" And I said, "Actually, Cheryl, I'm not even going to tell you what I'm doing because it's so stupid. You're going to think it's awful. You're not even going to want to talk to me." And she's like, "Try me." And I was like, "Okay, it's called Laser Pussy." And she's like this feminist time traveling superhero. And she's like, "Can it be a book?" Because like that's like her world is books. And I'm like, maybe it can. So then I was like, yeah, actually it would be a good book. So then I found a wonderful artist. Her name is Kayla Einstein, and she's in New York, and she's just so like funny and patient and talented and lovely, and she's young. She's only a few years out of school, I think, and she's just like, she's awesome. So we have this like little team now, and we're working on this book, and we're getting ready to pitch it. So I don't know. Wish us luck. Hopefully,
that's
hopefully
awesome.
everybody can see. Like, they don't. I mean, hopefully people see how like stupid it is, but it's also like really amazing because she's like, it's like this sort of feminist coming of age story, and coming into your own power story.
I love it, and I think there's so much room for that kind of story these days. I just based on the name alone, I mean, like, I think it sounds like it's going to be a fantastic story.
Oh, thank you. I hope so. I'll keep you posted on that one.
It's neat though, because I feel like there's almost like there could be like these subgroups within our moms group, because you've got, moms who wrote an article for an article for a newspaper, a magazine, whatever, that then becomes a book, which is kind of like Emily Ziff Griffin wrote the article about her dad, which is now, she didn't write a book on it, but she's got like a screenplay, like option for it. And then you've got yours, which became a good book, which is becoming a TV show. And then there's also the subgroup of like comic book and graphic book novelists, because you've got Amanda Dibert, who is like a comic book writer. And I don't know.
So many talented people in this moms group. I know. It's so crazy talented. I'm if there's anything you need, I try to explain it to people. And it's hard to explain. I'm like, well, I mean, if you have a rash, I guess you could like post the picture of the rash. And they're like, well, why wouldn't you go to a doctor? Well, because it's moms. Like, it's just easier.
I do feel like when I tell people about it, I just imagine that they're envisioning like a bunch of like moms with their glasses of rosé and their charcuterie boards and their wide brim hats, all talking about like what I'm like, no. We're moms with like our hair hasn't been brushed, and we're like got a cell phone up to our ear, and we're juggling a kid on the hip, or like, like, and then the other kid is coming down the street on the skateboard, and we're like giving advice to like, like the random people on the street. Not it's not what you think of as like, oh, we're just like all moms and the
No, they're
stereotype of mom,
so
mom, mom, mom.
badass.
It's like, no, we're just women who happen to be mothers and have a lot of information and are really smart and good at like connecting with people.
And generous, like so
Yeah.
generous. I've met so many amazing friends. Like we actually did like an offshoot adoption group, and I've met amazing friends through that. I actually met Jen Getzinger through that. And
Yeah.
then she's become such a lovely friend and the director. And I mean, like anything it's kind of like one of those, like, yeah, what do you want? Like, like anything you want, like a doctor, a repair person, advice,
Yeah.
like how to get your
Financial
passport.
advisor.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah. So I mean that's kind of the advice I would give to anybody is like find your equivalent of like the moms group. Get a group of people who are willing to make themselves available to each other.
That's such good advice. Really, that's how we get along in the world. It's a
Yeah.
really it's a harder, more lonesome existence, I think, if you don't have your people.
And especially when you're doing a career that's not traditional and not as stable as some, I think relying on other people, I think there's been so many instances where we have people in our group who have these freelance gigs and things come up and they need last minute childcare or last minute pickup or last minute anything really.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
oftentimes there's someone who can help out in some way.
Yeah, just so many good souls, so many good souls. I'm really feel very fortunate to be part of that.
I usually ask people, what advice you would have for someone coming up. And so I can ask you that question too. But I have a more like direct question for you just because of your experience, which is what advice would you have for someone who's trying to maybe turn their grief or their life experience, I don't know that I want to say trauma because I don't think it has to be a trauma. It could be like a really just moving experience and they want to write about it or share it with people in whatever their chosen medium is. What advice would you have for people who are looking to do that?
Oh, that's such a thoughtful question. I'd say a couple things. I'd say first, start writing and write it down as scenes. Don't think of this is the product I'm going to have, a memoir or some kind of book or play or screenplay. Just start writing scenes of what you want to remember and what the story
Mm.
that you want to tell. I actually give a little class. I give a writing workshop. And I just did this for some striking writers not that long ago,
Oh, wow.
and I'll do it again too soon. So watch the space. But I would say just write things down in scenes. Give yourself the gift of time. So even if it's 20 minutes, there's something called the Pomodoro technique, and you write for 20 minutes. Don't do anything else, just write. And then
Yeah.
after 20 minutes, you can get your tea or your water or check your email. But then, do it in 20-minute blocks. You can do anything for 20 minutes, really, except maybe not breathe. But
Hmm.
do your 20-minute block. And then, if you're not sure what it should be, or even if you feel like, well, this is just a bunch of notes, go to an extension class. Go take a class and get your people together. Either join a writers group or go take these like extension courses or online courses. There's so many ways to learn how to put this into something. Don't let I'm not a writer or I'm not good at writing stop you from writing, because you'll get better. Writing is a muscle, and you get
Yeah.
better, and you just like anything, you have to learn how to do it. So I would say go take one of those extension classes or go take an online class, and
Yeah.
learn how to put it into, and then it's also nice to have someone. If you're in a writing group, you have to be accountable to people. So I think accountability is a huge part of that. But I would just say keep writing. My other rule for myself, and then I tell in my classes, always make yourself the asshole. So
Mm.
nobody really, that's basically about being vulnerable, acknowledging your mistakes, acknowledging your part in a conflict. So nobody really wants to read about how all these other people around you were terrible to you. And, maybe they were, and especially if you're a child, that's not really, it's not
Yeah.
applicable for that. But like,
Yeah.
if I was writing about my marriage, my first marriage, I wrote about the alcohol issue in the marriage, but I also wrote about how like I didn't have the tools to stick with that. Like
Yes.
I couldn't muster the strength and whatever I needed to stay with it and to see it through. Like always give yourself, or don't give yourself a hard look. Do not give yourself a
Yeah.
pass on any of those things. And it's going to be you'd rather have your audience, see that you realize your flaws and the mistakes that you made than them judge you for not acknowledging it.
Yeah. That I think, I mean, that what you just said right there is so important because the vulnerability is like what really draws people in, I think. And if you are like pointing out your flaws, you're like making yourself wide open and you're inviting people in a way that's so intimate by, owning your side of the story and owning up to your own flaws, and it allows people to also recognize that they have the same or similar or flaws just in general as well, and so they can kind of identify with that. And
Yeah, being
yeah.
right is not that great. It's not that important to be right.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
If you can, try to be wrong like 15 times a day
Yeah.
because then you can just like realize you're wrong and then move on. It doesn't, just like that whole feeling of like having to be right, becoming a victim, everybody else around you. That's like
Mhm.
very like tiresome and
Yeah.
it's hard to be around that. I would just
Yeah.
say, acknowledge where you went wrong, obviously apologize if you need to,
Yeah.
and then maybe an apology will never fix anything, but at least you've done your side of the street.
Yeah. Yeah. You've done what you need to.
And
Yeah.
also punching up, not down, I think is really
Yeah.
important when you're writing about your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I also would love to ask you, the other question that I always ask my guests is, what does making it mean to you now versus when you were younger?
Oh my gosh. Well, when I was really young, I used to go roller skating and listen to disco and look at myself in the mirror, try to like blow dry my hair and imagine myself like going to a disco every night and calling my friends on a red phone. Like for some reason, a red phone seemed important, and like dancing every night. That seemed like making it to me a long time ago when I was like 11. And
Yeah.
then I guess I thought I would have some kind of professional corporate job where I wore a suit. I think
Yeah.
that was sort of like that's about as far as I got, which is kind of why I'm a late bloomer. I don't think I really
Yeah.
like thought all these things through. Um,
Yeah.
and then now I would say making it is I'm like grateful to get out of bed and be able to walk and to be able to see my child and see my husband, and then we all live together and we're safe and
Yeah.
we have what we need. Like that to me is making it.
Mhm.
Like we have like we can eat today. Like that. I know it doesn't that sounds very basic, but I understand what the other side of that is as well, and I feel just
Yeah.
very fortunate that that's I don't know. And then I don't know, I guess you could throw in a TV show or two and then that would for me be um there's been some times where I think like I stare down at like this whole like, and I've been really late on work these last couple months this summer. It was basically kind of a bust, but I would like look down this list of work that I had, and it was for banks and insurance companies and ad agencies, and I would just think like I can't do this forever. Like I just don't see
Yeah.
myself doing this forever. But then on the flip side, I'm like, wow, what an awesome problem to have. Like I get paid for writing, sitting here in my own house doing it. Like I don't,
Yeah.
so I have to temper any kind of goals with. I think I'm like super grateful for what I have now.
Yeah. I understand that. I think it's like that's always like the challenge, right? Is to like find that balance between feeling grateful but wanting more or wanting something different, and feeling, either unchallenged by the work that you have in front of you, or just, it's not what you actually want to be doing, but recognizing that, wow, what a privilege it is to like have something that keeps a roof over your head, and to be able to say, I don't want to do this, but hey, I get to do this and be paid for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I mean, I guess the next level up would be helping on a profound level, like create change, right? Like a Melinda
Right.
Gates type, like that, or how do you Mackenzie Bezos, or, however
Yeah.
see your I write a lot about philanthropy. Actually, I'd love to write about philanthropy. And I like to do that for my corporate clients because it makes them look good too. And it's like highlights the things they're doing. But I would like to be able to, make that kind of profound change
Yeah.
at some point myself.
And I think that's like the neat thing about where the arts and corporate can kind of like help each other too, right? Is like you being a ghostwriter for them in whatever way you can like help open their eyes to like the ways that they can like be philanthropic and highlight the good things that they do that may not think maybe they don't always recognize how important it is. Sometimes they do. I'm seeing a shift in the corporations that I've been working with, that they are actually recognizing what good it does for them and for their staff when they do philanthropic things, or take the time to invest in their employees, whether that's through like mental health stuff or like appreciation events or increases or time off, or whatever it is. I do think that like the kind of work that you do, or like when they bring in the creatives, they can really kind of open their eyes to like, yeah, let's take a break, let's air it out, and let's create some synergy instead of taking.
Right.
And that doesn't mean just money, it means energy and time. And yeah.
Right. I mean, I think all this money should be for taking care of people. Like that's, I guess we
Mm-hmm.
get back to the essential crux of the strike problem is, there are some people who are making a lot of money on the backs of other people, and it's not fair, and that's not, I don't think that's a great way to run a country, and that's kind of
No.
how we run our country too. And I was just
Yeah.
in Portugal and Ireland and Northern Ireland, and it struck me like, oh wow, actually like food's like really affordable and reasonable here, and like living is really affordable and reasonable, and there's like healthcare if you need it and education if you need it, and that's what we should be spending our money on. Like money's
Yeah.
for people, money's for all
Yeah.
the people. So
Yeah. I just there's another podcast that I listen to, and the host, he's from New Zealand, and he just flew back to New Zealand to get back surgery because it was going to cost him too much to do it in the United States. So it was cheaper for him to fly to New Zealand and do back surgery and then come back when he's healed up.
I know it's embarrassing, really.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
Shame.
Yeah.
So I hope we can fix it in time.
I hope so too. I hope so. Vanessa, it's been so nice meeting you, and it's been so nice chatting to you. I know we kind of went off on a weird trail there at the
I
end.
know we're on like a bettering humanity trail or something, but thanks
But
for getting us there.
yeah, but that's what the arts is all about. At the end of the day, I mean, like, okay, so my friend Eric and I say like we should, like art belongs in the toilet, it belongs in the trash, because you shouldn't take it too seriously. But at the same time, the arts truly is like can be such a great connector of people and ideas and healing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of what helps make us human,
Yeah. 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 It's been so nice chatting with you. Do you want people to follow you on any social medias?
Sure. I basically post pictures of like my garden and my breakfast and my dog. But
Yeah.
I'm on Instagram at Vanessa McGrady.
Awesome. Okay. And then you can get Vanessa's memoir, Rock Needs River, pretty much anywhere. But, we always encourage independent bookstores. You can probably just go in there and ask them to order it for you if they don't have it in stock already. And I'm
Yes.
sure they'd be happy to.
Yes.
And then we look forward to seeing the graphic novel when that gets pitched and funded.
Me too. Well, thank
Yeah.
you. It's really been lovely to talk to you, and I feel like I'm on such great company on this show. Like I've like such a fan of like Clayton Ferris and Leonora, of course, and some
Yeah.
of these people that you've had on already. So thank
Yeah.
you for inviting me. It's really been a joy.
Of course. I know. I feel very lucky that those folks have wanted to be guests on my show too. So, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode. You can follow Vanessa on Instagram at Vanessa McGrady. That's Vanessa, Vanessa, McGrady, McGrady. Check out her website, VanessaMcGrady.com, and order her book on Amazon or at your local bookstore. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen, and please share the show with your friends. Be sure to follow the show on Instagram at Making It After 40, the number 40. And to see what I'm up to when I'm not podcasting, check out my Instagram at Lisa Rodriguez. Thank you all for listening and have an excellent week.